Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am a mom. I'm so happy. Both Brian and I are very happy. She is so loved. I love being a mom and it's been a really awesome transition into motherhood, and I wanted to chat a little bit today about the birth story, if you will. Just chatting a little bit about how she came into this world, how our daughter came into this world, and my experience with that. Wanted to talk about it now because I know the memories will fade with time, and I am almost 2 weeks postpartum now, so she's still fresh. But yeah, it was nothing like I could have ever expected or prepared for. And I kind of wanted to give a very realistic look into birth and unmedicated birth because, I mean, a lot of people do talk about it, but I don't know, I feel like I was kind of naive and unprepared going into it, even though I did a lot of research. You guys know me, you know that I like to research absolutely everything before doing anything. I like to be prepared. So I had prepared for a long time, months, even before I was pregnant, to prepare myself for this birth because I knew that I wanted to do it unmedicated. I didn't end up following everything on my birth plan, but that's kind of what happens. We are overall very happy with her, and she's been growing great. She has well surpassed her birth weight now, so she is on track growing, and breastfeeding has been great. I love breastfeeding. But yeah, we'll talk more about that after. But yeah, I just wanted to chat about how she came into this world. So I was originally due on August 7th. She, of course, did not come on August 7th. So that came and went. And then Brian's birthday was that weekend, August 10th. So we celebrated his birthday. She still hadn't come yet. We kind of joked like, oh, maybe she'll come on your birthday. And then my birthday came around, the 14th. And at that point I was 41 weeks. And finally, labor began on my birthday. So very early in the morning, like 5:30 in the morning, I distinctly remember getting these menstrual pain type cramps. So it kind of just felt like my period. They were pretty mild, but I don't know about you guys, but I cannot sleep or rest through period cramps. Like, I never got really bad cramps, but I just have a really hard time resting and sleeping through them. So I remember this. I did not sleep since that point. So since my labor began. So I didn't really have to do like any of my comfort methods or anything like that for a while. So I have this book here, actually, if I can pull it out. This book I really loved. I've shown you guys this one, but I learned a lot about unmedicated natural hospital births through this book. But it says in the book to ideally go to the hospital when you're 7 centimeters dilated. But of course, you can check yourself if you really want to, but I didn't know how to do that. So I kind of tried to be at home for as long as possible. I was at home for over 20 hours laboring at home. I don't even remember the exact time. The whole day, it was the contractions were irregular, so they weren't, some of them had a distinct start and finish, whereas others kind of tapered off more. They were very hard to track. But I had kept a note in my phone for all the ones that I could, and it was just like contractions all day. Ended up kind of trying to expedite them or try to like increase them. I did the miles circuit. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, I did all the tips and tricks for like how to induce labor at home. And I don't really think any of them worked. Like I did, the raspberry leaf tea. I mean, a lot of this stuff is also to prepare your body. But I did a lot of these things, and I honestly, because my experience was so difficult, it's hard for me to say for sure if any of them worked. The one thing that I will say helped was all of my like yoga ball exercises, my just yoga exercises in general, I feel like really helped keep me limber. And I think that also really helped get baby to drop really low, because she had been very low for a while. And I think it was because of that. I also did the mile circuit. And the night before labor began, I actually tried to pump for the first time with my manual pump, just to kind of see, just to test out the mechanisms and stuff to see how it would work. And then the next morning I went into labor. So, but anyways, where was I? Hello. I did go to the barn while in labor, and I just kind of leaned on Iro and just kind of breathed through some of the contractions. And at this point, they kind of needed some of my attention. We ended up doing a lot this day, and I really do regret it looking back on it. Like we went to Target and TJ Maxx, because I just thought walking and being out and about would really help get things going. But looking back on it, I regret it because I was so exhausted when active labor began. And things started really ramping up once it was the nighttime, of course, you know, the most inconvenient time for everybody. And at that point, contractions were needing my full attention, and they were very uncomfortable. And the best way I can describe them is like really strong menstrual cramping, very strong period cramping that would kind of like a wave. It would come and then it would go. But active labor was definitely way, way stronger. But anyways, we're still in early labor at this point. And I got in the bath. I was laboring in the bath, listening to music, singing really helped. At this point, I told Brian to just go to bed because I really needed him to conserve his energy, and I would wake him up when it was time. Like 3 something in the morning, I don't even know. The contractions were really, really painful. And I couldn't do it anymore. It was already like a lot, and I have a very high pain tolerance. We went and picked up my mom, and we went to the hospital. We went to triage. They checked me, and I was only 3 centimeters dilated. So, you know, my book, like I mentioned, had suggested to go when you're like 7 centimeters dilated, because that way you're kind of set up for success. That way, minimal interventions and stuff. But I didn't know, you know, what I was at. So normally that's not enough to be admitted into the hospital, but they did admit me because the day prior, so on my birthday, I did get a ultrasound and non-stress test done, which is pretty standard for my midwife office. Once you go past your due date, they like to check via ultrasound to make sure that your amniotic fluid levels are good, so that they know that you're okay to continue carrying the baby. And on that ultrasound, they noted that her abdomen was measuring very, very small, like less than the 1st percentile, I don't know, something crazy. And it wasn't the midwife office that I got the scan done, but the doctor had come in and was like, he was kind of concerned. Like, he tried not to make me freak out, but he just kind of like listed off all of the like things, and he pushed for an induction. I didn't really feel great with that. I did not want to be induced. And I kind of, I don't know. It's hard to argue with a medical professional, obviously. So I just kind of was like, Because of that scan, they admitted me, because they were like, okay, if this baby doesn't come out now, we're going to need to be induced, you know. I need monitoring, etc. So unfortunately, because of that ultrasound scan, which ended up being wrong, spoiler alert, I had to be hooked up to a fetal monitor my entire labor. They were thankfully able to give me a portable one, so I didn't have to be like hooked up, but it worked on Bluetooth, so we couldn't play my birth playlist via my Bluetooth speaker, which I was really hoping for. We just had to play it like on the iPhone speakers, and you know, that's not great. But anyways, I had to be hooked up to this monitor, which really sucked because I got, you know, I have a room with a birthing tub, and it's like a full soak tub, and I couldn't get the monitor wet. I couldn't like submerge it. So when I tried to use the tub for the contractions, it had to be below my belly button, so it just didn't really help. So I was kind of disappointed about that. But anyways, I labored at the hospital for a very long time. I don't even know. She wasn't born until 8:59 p.m. and I had gotten there at like 3 a.m. So you can do the math. but the contractions were really ramping up, and they were extremely, extremely painful. No position would alleviate anything. It was like the same pain in every position. But I will say that laying down and like side lying was the worst for me. Like I did a lot of research into like the Bradley method, and there's a position where you are laying down, and I could not do it. Like, it was excruciating. The one position that I ended up kind of sticking in for a long time was standing, actually. So I would just stand and lean on the bed, like just with my hands. And my wrists were like, I really messed up my wrists because I was in that position for a long time. I tried another position I really wanted to try was being like sitting reverse on the toilet, the dilation station as they call it. But I didn't like that. I didn't like anything. Like being on the yoga ball, on all fours. I did like every single position, and everything was excruciating. It was bad. And I did end up having the midwife check me way more than I initially planned, like check my dilation, because the labor was just so long. Keep in mind, I had not slept since 5:30 a.m. the previous day. So I'm running on 20-something hours of just no sleep, haven't eaten in a while, and I was really starting to lose it. And I had prepared for that with that book that I mentioned. It talks a lot about when you're at a certain dilation, you're just incapable of making like rational decisions. You're just like losing yourself. And so I did prepare for that. I remember at one point she had checked me. It had been a couple hours and I was 5 centimeters. So at least I was making some progress. But at 5 centimeters, the pain was really, really bad. I started begging for the epidural, which I prepared Brian and my mom for. I told them there would be a point where I would be begging for it and to just keep encouraging me, which they did. I'm surprised because I was really like, I'm not even kidding you guys. Like, this is my rational brain talking. I need the epidural. But I stuck it through until 8 centimeters. So this is where things really took a turn. My contractions were so painful that there was no time in between them. So for a lot of them, I would get through a contraction and then immediately get into another one. So I was screaming, I was vocalizing, yelling, help me, I need help. This is kind of traumatizing, but, and then begging for the epidural. At this point, it had been so long. There had been hours between when I was 5 centimeters and 8 centimeters. And she had checked me like 2 times and I was still 8 centimeters. So I was stuck at 8 for a couple hours. And that's considered, one of the more painful times of labor. I just felt like I was in that transition period for a very, very long time. And I just couldn't do it. I nearly passed out a couple times just from exhaustion and the pain, and that's not safe, right? So it was hard for me to continue standing up because I was passing out. They did end up giving me IV fluids because of it, and it did help, but it can only do so much. I really needed to sleep. So I eventually did get the epidural at 8 centimeters dilated because it had just been so long, and this was not part of my birth plan. But I can even say now I don't regret asking for it. Now, unfortunately, it did not work, so they had to insert it a couple times, and I was getting contractions while they were inserting it, and you have to stay still. That was horrible. But the actual insertion of the epidural, I didn't mind at all. I don't have an issue with needles or anything like that, but it didn't work. So it only succeeded in numbing the lower part of my right leg. So it didn't work. So I just had to continue on, and it was essentially still an unmedicated labor and delivery because it didn't help with anything. And at that point, I was reaching pushing time. I had said I feel like I need to push a couple times, but they it's not that they didn't believe me, but they were like, let's give it some time. And then eventually I really did feel that feeling of needing to push. So because of the epidural, unfortunately, I was stuck to the bed. But because I was utilizing midwives instead of like a regular doctor, they let me do any position that I wanted to on the bed, you know, on all fours, squatting, anything, as long as I was on the bed, which is fine because my leg was numb, so I wouldn't have been able to do anything else. And the pushing, I was expecting, because I had always read like that the pushing part is the best part of labor because you get like relief. It's like relieving the push, but I didn't really feel that. Pushing was pretty excruciating, if I'm being honest. But at least it was a sign that, you know, labor is nearing an end, right? So that is the big plus of that. But pushing was hard. You definitely utilize the same muscles that you use to go number 2, and during contractions, you know, your body starts pushing on its own, but you kind of also push with it, and it was tough. They had to like count for me and then hold, and then my breathing was all messed up. A couple times the nurses had to like yell at me like, Bryn, focus, because I was just vocalizing like a dying animal. Very like primal rage, like I was so loud. It's probably a good thing I went to the hospital when I did, because these contractions were so painful, and it was like 3 a.m. in my apartment. Yeah, there's no way. I was gonna get the cops probably called on me. But yeah, pushing was tough. I remember specifically when her head came out, her face just being stuck right there, and I had to wait for the next contraction to push. Brian saw, you know, watched as she came out. I got to feel her little head of hair. And I originally wanted Brian to catch her, but it was just like, I didn't even care at that point. I just wanted her out. And it turns out her arm was like, the way Brian described it was like, kind of like this. And so I had to push her out like that. And she was also sunny side up, I believe. So, and I had a numb leg. So I had one working leg. Oh yeah, but the position that I ended up pushing in and that ended up working well was they put a squat bar on the bed, and I put my feet on the squat bar, and then like a bed sheet tied in the middle, and I would hold on to that, and while I pushed I would like pull on it and curl, and yeah. So the pushing was hard. I was getting a little frustrated with the midwife because I specifically wanted to know how many pushes I had to do, and I understand that that's hard to gauge, right? So she would just be like, I don't know, honey, like I can't tell you. It's like, just tell me, like just give me a random number, because like that's all I needed was just like, oh, she's right there, like a handful more, you know. I think that would have really encouraged me versus, you know, oh, I don't know, honey, like it could be anything, like I can't tell you that. And that was really hard to hear while in active labor and pushing. So I understand she was just being realistic, but like in the moment, it's not like I'm going to be counting if you give me a number. So just like give me a number, you know. Brian though was doing a really good job at this point. He was like saying, she's almost there, babe. You got this. Like she's coming. I see her head. Like he was really, really helpful. And then my mom, of course, also helped because he needed breaks during this really long labor. But yep, I pushed her out. Once her head came out, it was really, really quick. And they put her on my chest. Now the NICU was on standby because of that ultrasound. So they wanted to check. She also passed meconium. They wanted to just make sure that she was okay. And it took her a bit to cry for a second, and then she cried, and it was like the most beautiful sound ever. And she was so beautiful. And she ended up weighing 7 pounds, 6 ounces, something like that. So she was not, the scan was wrong. She was perfect, a perfect baby. So the NICU quickly left and didn't need to do anything else. And then after that, even though it was so long, I thought I was dying and screaming, help, help me. I can't do this anymore. I was like on cloud 9 after. I was joking with the nurses. I loved looking at my placenta and like learning more about that. The nurse was showing me, and it was just like the best. One of the best moments ever was just getting her out and just enjoying like that after, you know, the golden hour, and also nursing for the first time. It was just so surreal. and Brian passed out pretty quickly because it was so much. And yeah, it was beautiful. But overall, my end thoughts is next time, I think I'm gonna just get the epidural pretty early on. I know they say that your first tends to be like a long labor. It tends to be easier with future children. But yeah, no, it definitely changed my thoughts a lot on the epidural. Like, I never judged anyone for getting it, but the pain that I experienced is not even something that I can accurately describe. I don't know, I was losing myself. I genuinely thought, like, I don't know if I can do this again. And I want a lot of kids, so I think that I was definitely a little naive. If you do research into unmedicated births and labor, there are a lot of people who strongly believe in that you can have a pain-free labor and birth. So I was like really, I did all my research, listened to all the podcasts, watched the videos, read the books. I did everything that I could to prepare for this, talked to people who had unmedicated births. And I think it's because, like, it's so different for everybody that you just can't judge, because it's so different for everybody. So it really kind of changed my mindset on medication during labor. I think that next time I will feel a lot more comfortable accepting medication and help during labor. And then just hope that it works next time. And if it doesn't work, at least I know I can do it. I literally did this on hard mode times 10. So, and like, it really gave me an appreciation for all women who give birth and who have given birth. Anyway, I just wanted to share that story. Hopefully it helps, I don't know, anyone out there who is expecting, or maybe you don't want kids and you just wanted to hear about my experience. If so, thank you for sticking around. It's really crazy and surreal that when I started this channel, it was just, I got Patsu the ferret, and now I have a daughter of my own, and you guys have been with me through, moving to different apartments, me getting married, having a baby. So it's just great. But I don't know when I'll post again, but I am still active on my Instagram accounts if you're interested in following me there. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your summer if I don't see you on here. And yeah, just thanks for sticking around.